Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for participating in our webinar today, Lead Follow-Up Failure, Sales, Marketing, Discuss. We here at Conversica, along with our good friends at metadata.io, are happy to have you here. By the way, for those of you who don't know, metadata is an AI operator for your demand generation process. You can deploy account-based marketing with metadata to generate a predictable qualified lead flow at scale. Okay, I know you're dying to dive in, but first let's go over just a few housekeeping items. First, you will want to stay to the very end of this webinar because as a thank you for attending the entire webinar, you will be enrolled into a raffle to win a pair of Beats headphones, genuine. Yep. We will follow up with the one lucky winner after the webinar. Also, if you have a question at any time during this webinar, and in fact we're going to have some times when we specifically ask you for questions, please use the Ask a Question tab located on the left-hand side below the player. Take a look. See it now? See it? Good. You can ask a question anytime during the presentation or specifically when we ask for them. Your question will be addressed during the Q&A session in the middle or at the end. If your question isn't addressed, don't worry, a team member will follow up with you with an answer, we promise. Please note, there's no separate call-in number for the webinar. If you have any difficulties with the audio, please try refreshing your browser. And there are additional resources for you to check out under attachments to the right. So take a look, there's an attachments button there. There are other attachments there, and also there's under the Ask a Question tab. You can download those items at any time, and we'll cover those a little bit at the end of the webinar. Also, take a look, there's links in the presentation, which are useful but not live. So you can take note of them, or they're all represented in the attachment section, so you don't have to worry about it. You can click on them there. At the end of the webinar, please take a moment to rate the presentation and provide feedback using the Rate This tab. See it over on the right there? Good. And we're serious. We would really, really appreciate you doing that. Helps us know what was valuable and how we can improve in the future. Also, we're recording the webinar. The recorded version of the webinar will be available using the same URL you used to attend shortly following its conclusion. So hang on to that URL so you can share it with your friends and your family and trade them for popsicle sticks. Additionally, you will be sent the webinar recording within a few days of the webinar. Okay, that's the intro stuff. We'll dive on in. I promised we would. I'm Gary Gerber. I'm Head of Product Marketing at Conversica, and I'm going to introduce you now to our esteemed guests. Yes, in the sales corner, we have Nancy Nardin. Nancy started Smart Selling Tools 9 years ago to help sales ops, and sales enablement leaders keep up to date on technology to drive sales. She's been recognized as one of the top 25 sales bloggers in the world and top 30 social sales influencers in the world. And in the marketing corner, oops, that was kind of a lame one. Sorry about that, Matt. We have Matt Heinz. Matt is president and founder of Heinz Marketing with 20 years of marketing business development and sales experience from a variety of organizations and industries. He is a repeat winner of Top 50 Most Influential People in Sales Lead Management and Top 50 Sales and Marketing Influencers. These guys are both awesome. Welcome, Matt and Nancy.
All right, thanks for having us.
All right, you guys are pumped, ready to go? Marketing versus sales. All right, we're going to start marketing versus sales then with a poll question for the audience. So audience, take a look down below. Poll question is, what is your role, you the listener, in the organization? Are you in sales? Are you in marketing? Are you in sales ops? Are you in marketing ops? Are you in something else? Please click. We'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we can understand who is doing what. Oh, I need to open the poll. Okay, technical flaw. Here we go. Now we're going. Okay, I promise I won't delay that again. So in sales, are you in marketing? Are you in sales ops? Or are you in marketing operations? We'll wait a few more seconds. Seeing a bit weighted towards the marketing side, but sales is definitely well represented. All right, looks like we've got about half the folks are in marketing, about a quarter of the folks are in sales, and the rest are a mix of the others, the operations folks and the other folks as well. Perfect. Okay, so everyone's represented. Be prepared to cheer for your side of what's going on. And again, in this corner, we have Nancy Nardin, Smart Selling Tools. Let's hear it for Nancy. We have Matt Heinz, Heinz Marketing from the marketing team.
Woo!
Here we
We
go.
need some more sound effect machines.
Nice. All right, second poll question. Audience, get ready. Question is, here we go. Grade your organization's overall ability to fully leverage your sales leads. How good are you at it? A, you're getting maximum ROI from every one. B, let me start the voting here. Here we go. B, you're getting good ROI from most of them. And C, let's see, you're not doing bad, but you can do better. D, you're leaving too many things on the table. E, we got to get our act together. And the poll is open. Please vote. Vote early, vote often. All right. We're getting kind of a lopsided bell curve coming in here, but a lot of Ds. People who know that they have too many opportunities. Now it's moving up a little bit. Everybody's kind of curving down towards the bottom though. So Cs and Ds and a few Es, a couple of As and Bs. So people are pretty candid about this. Fair enough. All right. So how are people really doing? We thought that this was an important question to ask at Conversica. So we commissioned a research report to reach out and find out how our organization's really doing. So if we look at our curve, again, about half the people here think that they're doing a C. A fair number of people think they're doing pretty well. We've got some A's and some B's as well. So we commissioned researchers to go out to almost 1,000 companies, present themselves as the hottest of sales leads. They filled out a web form. They emailed sales, whatever it took to say, hey, I'm a hot lead and I'm interested. And then they tallied what happened. They did it multiple times to check and give them every chance for success across B2B and B2C organizations. And what did they find? Oh my, even though our bell curve suggests most people think they're doing okay. And in fact, as part of the research report, we asked the same question of the participants, and 3/4 of them thought that they were doing okay. And yet, of these companies who were presented with the hottest of sales leads, someone who raised their hand and said, I want to talk to sales, almost 4 out of 10, almost 40% of them did not respond at all. Just blew the person off, even though they said they wanted to talk to sales. And it gets worse. Of the 62% who actually did respond, almost 4 out of 10 of them, 63% of them gave up after just a couple of tries. And all the salespeople and all the marketers in the audience today know that the odds of reaching someone are all pretty minuscule if you give up after just 1 or 2 tries. And we've done this research report multiple years in a row, and interestingly what we've observed is that companies that do really well one year often do very poorly in subsequent years or other years. So 98% of the companies are extremely inconsistent. So even it's not hard to be good, but it's apparently almost impossible to be consistently good. If you want your own copy of the research report, there's a link in the attachment so you can get it. But what we did learn is there are 4 Ps. The companies that are very good at it practice what we call the 4 Ps of effective lead follow-up. If you're going to effectively follow up on your sales leads, you have to be prompt about it, you have to be personal about it, you have to be persistent about it, and you have to perform, which is, we couldn't think of a good P to say get through the spam filter, but that's what that means. You have to be able to do all 4 well in order to be good at your lead follow-up. So we're going to take these one at a time and bring in our contenders. Another poll question for the audience. Poll question number 3. How long does it typically take your reps to reach out to engage inbound leads? Is it about 5 minutes or less? Is it more than 5 minutes but less than an hour? Is it about more than an hour but less than a day? Day less than a week, which is getting a little sad? Or, I don't even know. Maybe it's more than a week. Hard to say. And the votes are open. Ooh, okay, this is not looking good. The votes are kind of low down. All right, so we've got some B's, some C's, more D's. So it's taken folks quite a bit of time, apparently. All right, fair enough. Interestingly, so when we look at promptness, how did people do in the real world? The curve is actually pretty close to how you folks rated yourselves, so that's good for you, for your honesty. And it's important. You can see that that's a lot of C's, a lot of B's and D's. Companies aren't doing that great. But common sense tells you that if you want to be first, you've got to be fast. So the likelihood of converting goes significantly down, even after 3 minutes. And in fact, only 13% of the companies responded within a 5-minute window, so it's pretty sad. Wonder what's going on here. So let's turn this to our contenders. Promptness, not very good. People are rating themselves poorly, and the real world says not very good. Whose fault is this? Is it sales' fault? Is it marketing's fault? Let's ask Nancy. So Nancy, go ahead and give us a start. What is happening from the sales perspective? Is it marketing's fault that these leads are not being followed up on promptly?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it depends. So I don't know, for instance, whether or not those leads are actually making it to sales. I don't know whether or not they're making it to sales, but not to the right salesperson. And I don't know how long it's taking to get to sales. So I don't really know the answer to that question. But I can say that there are some issues with the promptness from the sales side, and that is that, to expect somebody to drop what they're doing or their planned schedule, they may actually be on a call or ready or out in the field. To expect them to be able to call within a few minutes is really not realistic unless you have some people that, a staff of people in sales that are there to respond to inbound leads.
Makes sense. Matt, what do you think? Sales fault, marketing's fault?
It is common knowledge in the B2B world that the sales organization, if you put a SOW in front of them for the prospect and do everything for them, they will complain that the pen is blue ink and not black ink. So I think if you take that down to lead follow-up, a lot of sales reps look at leads and like, well, this doesn't look like someone that's ready to buy, or this isn't someone that's going to close right away. And so there's a lot of complaining about lead quality, and I think that actually has a direct impact on promptness. When the lead gets delivered, there's an opportunity to follow up. We know that engagement can happen more quickly, and yet there's a lot of hemming and hawing often about whether those leads are worth following up or not. And in the meantime, those leads go stale. So I think that sometimes when you strike while the iron's hot, when you've got some fresh leads in front of you, far more effective to do that follow-up than cold calling or pursuing some other menu. So I think clearly there needs to be some coordination between sales and marketing here, but I also think sales getting off their duff and doing their job would benefit everybody.
Okay, the gloves are going to have to come off now because I can't just let that one go. So here's the thing. Oftentimes there's not a statement or an SOW on an agreement between sales and marketing. So that's one issue. The second issue is that sales are used to getting leads that are crap. They're used to getting leads that, and by the way, the crap is mixed in with the really good leads, and so it's really hard for them to decipher. There needs to be some way to build that trust again so that sales knows there's been some sort of filter. They're not just throwing everything over the fence. I know this particular lead is with the right size company, or they're in the right industry, or there's some sort of qualification that has taken place. So I know that it's not the dentist, somebody from the dentist office down the street that happened to fill out a report for my SAP solution.
I will concede that point to the senator from Sacramento. That's fine.
So Matt, what can a marketer do to make it easier for sales to follow up promptly?
Yeah, well, in all seriousness, I do think that lead quality has to be addressed. I think if just because a warm body filled out a form does not mean that's a lead worth following up. So I think marketing has a responsibility to provide a level of quality and a level of filtering to ensure the right leads get to the sales organization. But if sales and marketing agree to the definition of a good lead, then sales should agree on what their follow-up is going to look like. I also think that marketing has a responsibility to provide some guidance for follow-up. Don't just throw a bunch of leads over the wall to sales and expect that they're going to know what to do, know how to follow up, know what messaging to use. I mean, I'm a huge fan of, for any campaigns in place that marketing does to drive demand, to enable and provide the sales organization with email templates, with voicemail scripts, with a specific guide to not just what the follow-up sequence should be, but also to ensure that there's continuity from a story and a message standpoint between lead campaign and sales follow-up. So I would agree with Nancy. I think that left to their own devices, there's no way that sales can do the right thing without some guidance and some precision.
Makes sense. Nancy, what can the sales team, what can they be doing to enhance the promptness of lead follow-up?
Make it clear who's got responsibility for what, and don't, so if there is a sales, an AE that's out in the field often, then it has to be addressed. The fact that that person is probably not likely going to be able to respond to a lead quickly, and so what do you do in those instances? Sales should be even initiating, if marketing's not doing it, initiating the conversation with marketing about what is the process, because everyone should be on the same team. So let's figure out what are the friction points and how do we eliminate them on both sides.
Makes total sense. Folks, you may have noticed, audience members, we have a slide up. I've been asking questions of our esteemed guests, but what questions do you have about promptness? We'll be talking about the other 3 Ps in a minute, so let's focus on promptness. Do you have questions for either Matt or for Nancy regarding promptness? We'll wait just a moment and see what opens up. Oh, boy, people didn't waste any time, did they? All right, I had a question came in really quickly for Matt. Matt, are there times when following up too fast is counterproductive or seen as, quote, creepy?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you really do have to take into account context, and I think this is another example of why it's important for sales and marketing to have a plan in place for lead follow-up. If someone is on the website and fills out a contact us form or requests a demo, that's an immediate follow-up. If someone comes by your booth and you scan their badge, they're at the trade show, they're on to the next booth. You don't have to call them in 3 minutes. Like, if you call their cell phone while they're leaving your booth, that is a little creepy and weird. So I think that you have to think about the context of where the prospect is as well as what they have requested, and come up with an appropriately aggressive but also contextual and value-added follow-up approach as well as message.
Makes sense. Another question came in. Nancy, I'm going to direct this one to you. Whose job is it to decide how to facilitate a quick reply to inbound leads and what technology is required?
It typically falls within operations, whether that's marketing operations or sales operations. I would say most often it's a marketing ops kind of thing, but don't do it in a vacuum. It should be done with sales input. Otherwise, if you don't have their buy-in as you're making those decisions, it's a little late to ask for it after the fact. So I do think both sides need to be responsible, and probably the marketing ops person is the one that should take that on. And they're also the ones that typically make the decisions on technology as well when it comes to the handoff between marketing and sales. Oftentimes sales leaders, they're not real good at, thinking about the technology and making a plan for it, but marketers are used to that. They typically have budget. They typically are used to experimenting. That's my view of marketing from the sales perspective. I don't know, Matt might correct me on that.
No, before Matt can do that, we're going to move on to round 2. Okay, we got a little reverb going there. Excellent.
Is that a train coming into the station? Are we on time?
Kind of sounds like it.
No intransigence on your side. Okay, moving on. Fair enough. Folks, there were quite a few questions came in. As I mentioned before, we'll make sure that you get answers to those, but we don't have time to answer every single one. So the next poll question, we're moving on. Moving on to persistence. So audience members, let me open the poll. And the question is, how many attempts to reach a lead do your reps typically make before giving up on them? Is it about 8 or more? They try between 5 and 7 times. They try around 3 or 4, 2 or less, or, defined attempt because I don't know what they're doing. Let's see. Oh, people are feeling pretty good about this. We've got a bunch of A's coming in, some B's, a couple of D's. Balancing out, but still kind of high up there. Okay, so we're going to move along. Looks like we've got a kind of a bell curve, a little heavy towards the top. Well done, but that's kind of balanced. Okay, so it's all balancing out all over the map. How did the real world do? Oh my goodness, so despite our voters thinking that it's kind of balanced, we saw in the real world a lot of D's, the vast majority of them. So, and this despite the fact that if you just try it 3 times instead of once, you're going to double the response rate typically. And yet, obviously, the people are not doing it. So even if they did reply, they're giving up way too quickly. All right, we're going to go to our contenders. We started with Nancy last time. We'll start with Matt. Matt, if companies are obviously giving up way too soon to effectively leverage their leads, what's happening? Whose fault is this?
It is common knowledge in B2B that B2B sales reps are lazy and are focused on a bright shining object, which is whatever's new and in front of them. You get a new lead, you follow up with that lead, you leave them a voicemail, and I've lost track of how many sales reps have told me, well, I left a voicemail, they didn't call me back, so I guess they weren't interested. So, I think your data definitely sort of showcases what we often see in the market, which is sort of a lack of discipline, a lack of organization to do follow-up. One call is not enough. One email is not enough. You think about like those of us that are presenting and those that are on this event today. I mean, we've got emails piling up. We've got people trying to call us. You don't respond to the email that came 5 minutes ago because you were busy doing something and it got piled up in your inbox. So some polite persistence is important. It's a critical part of the process, and yet I think sales too often expects that they can just do one contact, one touch, and move on. It just doesn't work that way.
Makes sense. Nancy, what do you say about that?
Well, I beg to differ with the common knowledge that salespeople are lazy. It's common knowledge that people say that all the time. But yeah, I don't think you survive very long if you're lazy and at sales, but I do think that often salespeople do indeed get busy and they forget. So they need technology that is going to help keep that lead in front of them and remind them of what's been done and what hasn't been done yet. But I also noticed that a lot of the attendees are marketers, and I'm not sure if everyone that's voted actually has a process for understanding how many attempts have been made. It may just be a guess on many of their parts, and so that we don't know. Maybe salespeople are actually sending a lot of emails and marketing just doesn't know about it, or they're leaving a lot of voicemails, or they're making a lot of calls. The other thing is it depends on what kind of sale that you have. If it's a key account or a complex sale where you expect to build a relationship over time, or if it's a very transactional related kind of sale. I do say, though, that persistence is the responsibility of salespeople.
Makes sense. Matt, any comment on that?
Yeah, no, I think I think sometimes you fall into one or two buckets here. And again, like in all seriousness, this is where I do think marketing has to partner with sales on the right approach. If someone has requested a demo, it is your responsibility to be persistent to give them that demo, right? And I think you can continue to follow up until they say, yeah, no, never mind, I don't need that demo anymore. If they downloaded a white paper, from the prospect standpoint, like the transaction's kind of over. They filled out a form, they got their white paper, they're done. And so it's your responsibility as an organization, and I'm not saying this is sales, I think this is sales and marketing. It's our responsibility to come back and prove that there's something of value we can provide in a follow-up to that to that white paper download. So just because they downloaded a white paper doesn't mean they want to see a demo. So what can you bring to the table in your follow-up email and your follow-up voicemail? What additional insight can you offer that makes it worth that prospect following up? And if you have something valuable based on the initial information they requested, I think you can earn the right to be more persistent to provide value to that prospect. Now, you have to respect their wishes. If they don't want to hear from you anymore, if they say, hey, back down a little bit, you're going to hear some of that sometimes. But, I mean, every set of research I've seen indicates that there is a sweet spot well beyond 1 or 2 contacts that is much more likely to get a response. Now, the point of diminishing returns usually somewhere past 10 or 12 contacts. At that point, you're statistically unlikely to actually get someone's attention, so you might as well put them on a nurture track and move on to the next prospect. But 1 or 2 or 3 attempts, is not enough.
Nancy?
Agreed about the attempts. As salespeople start to feel like they're pestering, especially because they're doing all these multiple attempts to a lot of prospects. So it feels like what you're doing as your job is just pestering people. But you have to keep in mind that your buyers are extremely busy. They don't realize that you're making all of these attempts, or if they do, they're probably feeling a little bad that they haven't responded in some way. In fact, I'll bet a lot of sales reps hear prospects say, hey, yeah, sorry, I did get your email, and I'm sorry I didn't respond. It's not an indication that in many cases that they're not interested.
Makes sense. Okay. We've opened up the floor for questions from the viewers. Do you have questions for Matt or for Nancy about being persistent when following up with your sales leads? We'll give people a moment to put in some questions. And let's see, one has come in for Nancy. Nancy, someone asks, what tools can salespeople use to quickly get personalization content? No, wait, that's wrong. That doesn't make sense. Well, we'll jump. That's okay. Wait, here's one that came in. What about using an inside marketing team for quick, consistent follow-up instead of the sales team? We find that more effective. Is that a common approach? I'll open that. Either one of you can take that one. That's kind of a two-sided question.
I'll take it. I think it's definitely a common approach. More and more in the last 5 years, it's really a hot area. So hot, in fact, that there have been whole categories of technology that have been developed and released in the marketplace to address it and make it easier for inside salespeople to do what they need to do. And often now these organizations are even falling within the marketing department. So yeah, definitely there are reasons to have, but here's the thing, you can only scale so much. If you start to get a lot of leads, you're doing a great job, you're getting lots of leads in, but you're not hitting that threshold of being persistent and being prompt, then what do? Just keep throwing more salespeople at them? That's where technology really comes in, and solutions, especially like yours, that help to take off that load and pass on only the more qualified leads to sales, because it becomes a matter of scalability and profitability as a result.
Makes sense. Matt, one of our viewers asked, how can we as marketing hold sales accountable without marketing feeling like we're pestering them to be persistent?
Well, I think it starts with a couple things. One is, a foundation of value that's been provided to that customer, right? And so if there's something of value provided, and if there's some real rational next step that you're offering that customer, I think that gives everybody confidence. But I think also, if you separate the types of follow-up for different types of leads, not every lead is the same. Just because someone, registered to win the iPad at your booth doesn't mean you should call them 15 times trying to get them into a demo. Sometimes people really are just looking. Sometimes people are downloading the white paper just to educate themselves. So I think that, having a real strategy for different types of leads, different contexts of requests from prospects is really important. And then ensuring that sales and marketing are on the same page with what is required. And then not just setting that and forgetting it, like looking at what's working and what's not, different types of customers, different types of offers, what's getting the best response and why, and making adjustments on both the marketing and the sales side to optimize not just response rate, but use of time. There's an opportunity cost especially on the sales team, for them to make additional follow-ups that aren't getting responses. Like that time could be spent on new leads. That time could be spent perhaps more productively on just well-targeted, well-selected cold prospects. So just, really make sure you're constantly looking to make the best use of your time, sales and marketing effort, as well as the prospect's time.
Excellent. All right, we finished our round and we're moving on. Good answers. Folks, there are a lot of questions being asked, which is awesome. We're picking them. We'll also, if we have time at the end, we'll pull some of these up as well. And as I mentioned, if they don't get answered now, we'll make sure they get answered offline. So don't worry about that. We're on to our next poll question. Poll question number 5. Personalization. So when you follow up with sales leads, how personal are the messages that you send to those leads when you reach out to engage them? Are they A, very personal, they really feel like there's a rep who cares about them? Are they B, kind of personal, looks like maybe it was sent by a person? C, kind of spammy looking? D, not personal at all? Or E, isn't dear sir or madam a great personal greeting? Go ahead and vote. Let's see what people think they're doing. Okay, we're seeing, again, kind of a bell curve, weighting down a little bit. Half people are saying be pretty personal. Kind of a mix on the other side, but weighting up towards the top side, so people are feeling pretty good about personalization. Let's see how they really did. Oh, if you felt good about personalization, odds are good that in this case it's justified. So if you think about personalization, it's just the basic things like a personal greeting or a personal email account from the sender. But we all, of course, have received what we know are spam messages, and that's on one end of the spectrum, and a personal message on the other. And people are much more likely to respond to these personal messages, and companies are getting quite a bit better at it, probably largely due to technology. So let's see what's going on. Let's go back to our contenders. Nancy, Matt. Personalization is actually going pretty good. Do you agree? Let's go back to Nancy. Nancy, do you agree, or if it could be better, whose responsibility or fault is that?
Well, here I have to admit blame on the sales side. I see it a lot. My area of focus is understanding the sales tech space, and so as you can imagine, I go onto a lot of websites and fill out forms to get more information on the tools and just for learning. And I'll get an email. All the time I get emails from salespeople who don't even bother to go to my site. If they had, they would see I'm not a typical person that's searching for tools. In fact, maybe you might want to have your marketing person get in touch with me. And they just don't even bother with that. So they've got to get better at figuring out how to at least make it appear like you care and they're not just another name on a list.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy, for making my case, and I'll just double down on that and just win this round easily. So yeah, I think it's I see a couple things. One, you either see a complete lack of personalization, right, where like there's the same one size fits all for everybody, or oftentimes I'll see really, really bad personalization. I mean, I literally got a friend of mine got an email the other day from if you filled out a form and the rep followed up and said, "Hi, I see you went to UCLA. My friend went to USC. That's cool." It's like, no, that's not cool. Those are rival schools, and that's not a great way to sort of build rapport. So I think, and also I think the other challenge we see a lot is that we'll see sales reps spend like 30 minutes doing research to leave a 20-second voicemail. I mean, there's a point of diminishing returns on what you need to find out. So yeah, I do think that personalization matters. It does not have to take a lot of time. Technology and marketing can provide guidance on how to do that. One of my favorite hacks on this actually comes from Steve Richard, who runs a couple companies out in DC, and he years ago told me about the 3x3 method. Take up to 3 minutes to find up to 3 things that are interesting about that prospect. These are things you have in common, or things you think are interesting, or even things that are going on in their business that might make it, that might be contextually valuable to bring up as part of your conversation. So personalization is important. You have to do it to really build rapport and to get response, but it has to be done quickly and with a specific strategy so that it scales.
You guys agreed. That was a quick round. Nicely done.
I didn't get a chance for a rebuttal.
But
Darn it.
how do
Because you
rebut to
agreed with
someone who
me. I
agreed with
win.
you?
Yeah.
Let's jump to some questions because, Nancy, unless you had something specific you wanted to add.
Well, I do, and I'll make it quick. There's
Sure.
really no excuse in today's world for a salesperson not to be able to get that 3 pieces of information within 3 minutes. There's a lot of technology. Nudge works right within Outlook, or your browser and presents great information about that specific customer. You can subscribe to different intelligence databases. There's lots of tools, so there's no excuse not giving your sales rep that so they can be more effective.
Fair enough. All right, audience, the poll is open for questions. If you have questions about personalization for Nancy or for Matt, send them on in. Here's one. Okay, we'll send this to the marketing. Matt, can you give examples of personalization that doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, I gave the UC,
Yeah.
UCLA, and USC is an example of something that doesn't work. You know, I think, you know, pulling information about the company that happens to be something you saw on the news today but isn't relevant to me and my role or the conversation I'm having, that doesn't really work as well. You know, I actually have seen some people try to build rapport, and I kid you not, like, you know, by bringing in political or religious conversations. Like, there should be a general rule: just leave those at home. Don't bring those anywhere into the workplace at this point. So yeah, engaging people in a lively debate on sort of you know, personal preferences, not necessarily a good idea.
Okay, good. Nancy, here's one for you. Are there any personalization attributes that should be off limits to use?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I would say, I think Matt kind of answered that. Religion, you know, those types of things, maybe even gender, you know, probably don't want to make assumptions and state them based on gender. I think the thing to keep in mind about personalization is that it doesn't have to be real personal about the person themselves. It can be about people who hold that role. So a salesperson might know that that he or she works with a lot of people in that specific role, and the questions they always ask are the following 2. And so maybe you have those same types of questions. So there's a way to personalize things on more than just who that person and their name and all of that.
Makes sense. All right, we're moving on to the next and final round. Poll question number 6 for the audience. Let me get this thing open, and the question is, how likely is it that your messages to your leads are actually making it into their inboxes? If it's obviously if it's an email, for this discussion's sake, how likely is that actually getting in there? Do you think A, it's highly likely that the messages are making it through the spam filters? B, pretty likely. C, I don't know, maybe. D, probably not very likely. Or E, we deliver spam and we are proud of it. Where do you think your organization lies? Okay, we've got a little bit of a bell curve coming again. B's, more C's are popping up. We'll give people just another minute to vote. Okay, it looks like, somebody else has got some A's coming in too. So people are feeling pretty confident. Half the people who are think they're a B, it's pretty likely, but who knows? Some people are saying highly, some people are saying 50-50. Nobody's really dinging themselves too badly, so let's see how the real world went. Okay, so again, it looks like we have actually a pretty good reflection. Most of the companies got B's or C's, and that's kind of how people graded themselves here, although no A's, so those people who voted A today, sorry, nice try. The fact is, research has shown that half of business emails in general end up in spam. That's consistent across lots of organizations, so the odds of your pitch, your rep email going in is also very high as well. But interestingly, we noticed that a high personalization score didn't necessarily predict that you were going to get through the spam filter, but messages that were getting caught in spam filters usually had low levels of personalization. So there's some correlation there that's interesting and some food for thought. So, into the breach we go. Matt, messages are still getting, companies are doing better, but still, I mean, if anything goes into the spam filter, ultimately, from the most important perspective, the customer, you ignored them. Whose fault is that?
Yeah, so I've reserved and focused most of my, fire and brimstone to Nancy at this point, but I'm going to turn my criticism to the audience at this point. 20% of you are think it's highly likely your message you're getting through. What kind of arrogance is that? I mean, I want to see those messages. If you could just start all attaching those and put those into the question set so we can all learn from your brilliance, that would be amazing. And then for B, pretty likely that's probably true, but who knows is not an acceptable answer for marketers or sales reps. I mean, we live in a world where we can measure open rates, we can measure click rates, we can see correlation of follow-on behavior from our sales and marketing activities. So if you're throwing stuff out into the wind and hoping that it works, that is not a recipe for success. So, I think that if you like your messages and you know for sure they're working, that is fantastic. But I think your data is more likely true that it's a very, very small percent of people that are in that group. It's more likely that, there might be some tactical impact or tactical measure of response, but simply because someone opened the message doesn't mean that it actually drove revenue performance or converted into an opportunity or actually supported the sales team. So there's a lot to unpack here that we can spend, I think, a whole other hour talking about.
All right, so Nancy, Matt just jumped into the audience and started swinging. Are you going to do the same, or what's your comment?
He sure did. I'm going to agree with him that it's marketing's fault. Marketing needs to, like he said, understand what's working and what isn't working. And also, let's just start by knowing what is it that sales is sending. I know for a fact that many organizations don't have a clue because they're not really looking at it. And in fact, they're not even really listening to recorded phone calls to know what people are actually saying, which is kind of crazy because you don't know what works and what doesn't work. So therefore, you can't take any measures to mitigate anything that's not working. So the first thing I'd say is figure out a way to know whether or not which emails work and which emails don't work. And now's a good time because there are a lot of solutions out there now that allow salespeople to do their own marketing campaigns. And I call it a marketing campaign because that's kind of what it's like. You're sending one to many. You're not really personalizing it. Marketing needs to be involved for sure in what those messages say because right now a lot of what's happening is that those technologies are just allowing sales reps to send out a whole bunch more crappy emails. And that's not good for the brand, and that's not good for revenue generation either.
That makes total sense. And I've got some great responses come from the audience. We struck a nerve here. One of our participants wrote, Matt, LOL, that was the only option. We didn't add who knows to the answer, but they had a smiley face.
True.
Someone else wrote, I think the questions were misleading, so I'm going to fall on the sword for that one. Fair enough. All right, let's open the floor for questions, folks. If we offended anyone, we certainly apologize. But if you have questions about performance, about getting messages to the inbox of the intended, please let's ask them now. All right, here's one. Looks like a good marketing one. Matt, what are the best metrics to measure?
Well, closed deals. I mean, I think, I don't mean to be facetious, but I think too often, when we look at performance, we tend to look at tactics and we look at activities. And listen, I mean, you're not, no one's going to buy a beer with an MQL. We have to look at overall sort of pipeline and closed deal performance. So correlation of marketing message and activity to closed deals, I think, is important to look at. But I mean, obviously, you can't have everything based on a lagging indicator of a closed deal. You have to look at what's working at the front end as well. So, are the messages you're putting in front of your prospects? Go ahead.
No, I apologize. Are you set? Nancy, let's see. What tools are best for checking? 250,000 seed lists, I guess is what they're writing here. What tools are best for checking?
250, yeah, I can see that question. Seedless? Or maybe the question is seed, yeah, I'm sure. So for checking what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah, exactly. And there's another question here about A/B testing, so that's probably related anyway.
Kind of, yeah, I'm sure it's around the same topic. Well, like Matt said, you can test for open rates, you can test for reply rates. One of the best ways to understand someone's level of interest is how many email or outreach attempts does the rep make versus the inbound responses from the prospect. That's always a good indicator, but just basic information on what's being opened and what isn't being opened. And you could probably go further and do some A/B testing on tweaking those messages as well and see if that makes any difference.
Makes sense.
They did ask specifically about tools, so I should say the tools. I mean, not just like what they do, but which tools they are. So there's Reply.io, there's Outreach, there's SalesLoft, and there's Groove. So those are the ones that I'd recommend taking a look at.
Nancy, is there a tool that rhymes with Monversica that might be a good tool?
Well,
I can't think of one, boy.
Yeah, I can't think of one. Now, so I was answering the question from if a salesperson is doing it, but I don't happen to believe that, as I said earlier, scalability, that it's the right move to have a salesperson physically do all of the responses. And I do believe that Conversica is a great tool for that. Why wouldn't you want, I mean, how many other technologies can you really impact your profitability and your scalability? Not a lot. So there you go. I gave you a good plug on that one.
Thank you. It was a loaded question, but I appreciate you being supportive on that. Let's jump to that real quickly. I'm going to take advantage of that to talk just for just a couple of minutes about Conversica to folks, and then we will actually come back to Matt and Nancy for more questions. So let me hop through here really quickly. And as Nancy alluded to, and both Matt and Nancy have been talking about it, you've got all these sales leads. They're all coming in, and you're trying to follow them up as best you can, but it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible for marketing to make sure that every single one is a good one, and it's almost impossible for sales to follow up on every single one as quickly or to the degree that you'd like them to do. And it doesn't necessarily even make sense for them to do that. So what we do here at Conversica is we apply artificial intelligence in the form of a sales assistant. And the sales assistant then follows up with every single lead as frequently and as quickly as is necessary. And so what you wind up doing is kind of filling in the gap. There's kind of a tapering need or tapering logic for salespeople to reach out, and there's this long tail of messages of leads where it doesn't make sense for the salesperson to follow up on them. And there's been no way, no cost-effective way until now, to find the gems in that long tail without wasting people's time. But now there is, because the AI assistant goes out and she's infinitely scalable, and she works all day and all night, and she loves her job, so she'll find the gem leads in that long tail of ones that didn't make sense to have people following up on. And when I said an AI sales assistant, I wasn't joking. She literally presents herself to your prospective customers as a human assistant. So she reads, she understands, she writes human emails, and people engage in conversations. They really feel like they're interacting with just a nice, friendly human sales assistant who's trying to get them hooked up with a salesperson who can help them. But unlike a person, as I said, she's infinitely scalable. She works all day, she's always polite, doesn't have a bad day, get in a fight or a sparring match. So she's super consistent. And the beauty of using AI to do this then is, in conjunction with your sales team and your marketing team, the sales assistant makes sure that you are 100% compliant with all 4 Ps all the time. This is a sample conversation. I'm not going to walk through it, but this is a real one. So the person just got a great experience. So everybody wins, right? So marketing is more efficient and effective. Sales is more efficient and effective. And to boot, the prospect, your most important asset, has a great experience for it consistently. You know, and different organizations deploy it differently. You know, for your A and B leads, perhaps have the salespeople reach out to them. That's fine. For your C and D leads, or the ones that are dead leads and undertouched leads, have the assistant do it and find the gems in there. And this is not a science experiment. This is not, you know, something that we're doing with a couple of garage companies. We have over 1,200 customers using this today, and those customers include IBM and Oracle and Epson and Symantec and yeah, I'm blanking, but I mean the list is huge, and they're very important companies. And again, not a science experiment. You can trust it as well with your prospects. All right. So in summary, before we get to questions, to successfully follow up on leads, you have to be prompt and persistent and personal and perform. Get through the spam filter. I think we've determined that both marketing and sales have an important part to play in this. Most organizations can improve, often dramatically, but they're going to work together to make sure it happens. And if you leverage AI, Conversica is a great example, you can be 4Ps compliant 100% of the time. Kumbaya for the both of you. And with that, we're going to open up, so we're going to use the questions again. Audience, interested, what did you as an individual learn today that you can put into action this week? I'm going to grab a few interesting ones. Let's see what we come up with. Let's see, one person has written...
So this is no voting, right, Gary? This is just
this is not voting.
Added in as a question?
Correct. So enter question.
Okay.
Even though it's not a question, it's a statement. Someone wrote, I am in marketing. We are going to try to work more closely with sales to be 4Ps compliant. Nice. Loving it. What's another one? Let's see. Well, that's a question. We'll come to that in just a moment. All right, looking for one more. Here's a good one. This person says they're going to follow Matt and Nancy so they can get more tips in the future about being 4Ps compliant. Nice. Excellent. Awesome. All right. Moving on. Those are good ones. Keep them coming. All right. So we're going to open the floor to some questions. Firstly, just to mention, if you look at the attachments section, there are links here, and you can download your own copy of that 4Ps report so you can see how organizations are doing and get the details. Also, if you would like your company to be included in a future edition of the report, there's a link you can also click on to add your name there. And we will be doing a drawing, as I said, after the webinar in order to find a winner for the Lucky Beats. We're not going to do it here, but I promise we'll do it legitimately. If you are the winner, we will be in touch. Also we're going to do questions in a minute, don't go away, but I want to make sure we thank our co-sponsor, Metadata.io, another awesome AI company. Oh, we'll come back to this in just a second. No, we'll do this now, and then we'll go into the questions. If you would like to see Conversica in action and also receive a pair of Skullcandy headphones, pretty awesome, we're doing a live demo on January 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific. You can register and attend. It's also at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration link is here, and that's also in the attachments. And we're going to have more webinars about the 4Ps. You can learn in February 22nd and on March 29th and on April 12th. Be sure to mark your calendar. But don't go away now because we have a few more minutes. We're going to ask some questions of Mark and Nancy because we got some really good ones. So let's see what questions have come in.
I'm seeing a lot of comments on what people have learned, which is great. It's interesting.
Somebody made a nice statement. We are not alone in seeing the challenges faced in marketing and sales. Working together is the key. We must communicate frequently to make it right for our prospects. Love it.
I mean, sometimes it's just nice to know, like this person said, that you're not alone. You know, you're not the only ones that don't quite have it figured out. It's tough. Matt and I are kind of poking fun at certain things, but these have been problems that have been around for a while. It's not easy to solve, except for the part about the long tail and making it easier for salespeople to just get the leads that are more qualified. The rest of it, it's kind of complicated.
Matt, here's a question. Somebody wrote, what does marketing have to do to make sales trust and support the efforts that we are constantly making to help increase sales success?
So that's a really good question, and I think we could obviously spend a lot of time on that. I think the challenge I have in the way the question is worded is it sounds like you want to make sales trust you, and I actually think that you need to think about it in terms of earning that trust. I'm a lifelong marketer, and despite the fact we've had fun over the last hour, I mean, Nancy and I actually agree on a lot of this, these pieces. I honestly think that the lack of coordination between sales and marketing is historically marketing's fault. Because marketing has not shared that revenue responsibility. And marketing's doing a lot of activities, marketing's doing sort of glorified arts and crafts projects, and maybe generating some leads based on volume as opposed to quality. And so there hasn't been a traditional real alignment around revenue responsibility and results. So I think marketing has to step up and embrace that revenue responsibility, and really partner with sales on a unified approach to the buying process and to the customer journey. So I think of it more as a bar that marketing has to earn. You have to earn the trust and respect of sales. It's not going to happen in a 30-minute presentation at your SKO. It's going to take some time, but I think your actions and your priorities are going to prove that over time.
Excellent.
Can I answer that one too?
Please.
Marketing has to stop saying things like salespeople are lazy, and sales also has to stop making generalizations around marketing. There has to be a culture of respect. I would suggest, I'm sure a lot of people have seen that TV show Undercover Boss. I love the idea of doing an undercover marketer or undercover seller, and have one or more live in the shoes of the other for a little while, be immersed in that organization, and see. Marketers have it tough. They're trying really hard. They want to support sales. They'd be crazy not to. So their intentions should never be questioned. And the same goes for sales.
Awesome. And with that, we are going to wrap up our webinar. Thank you so very much to Nancy Nardin of Smart Selling Tools, and Matt Heinz of Heinz Consulting. You guys were awesome. Thank you again also to all our participants, everyone who listened in and provided great questions and great votes. Follow-up webinars are coming down the line. And thank you to our partners, metadata.io, and catch us on the next webinars. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Sales, marketing, kumbaya.